Welcome. They never thought you'd find it. For decades, maybe centuries, the richest 1% built their empire on a secret so well guarded that even speaking about it was considered conspiracy. They didn't just control wealth, they controlled reality. Every number on a screen, every market fluctuation, every crash was a move in their game. And for the longest time, everyone else was too distracted to notice. But something changed. You broke the pattern. You started looking at the world differently, questioning what others accepted without thought. You noticed how every crisis made them richer, how every solution somehow funneled more power upward. You saw through the illusion they called an economy, and that's when the system began to tremble. The top 1% didn't just lose control of money, they lost control of the narrative. Because money for them was never paper or numbers. It was influence, it was access. It was the invisible thread that made presidents, media outlets, and entire governments dance to the same silent rhythm. And when you learned the truth, when you cracked the pattern, you disrupted that rhythm. You stepped out of the trance they designed to keep the world asleep. The same algorithms they used to track, predict, and manipulate behavior suddenly stopped working when they tried to map you. You broke predictability. You broke control. Because the secret you discovered wasn't just about money, it was about energy. Every transaction, every system of value, every click, every choice, it all feeds something. For centuries, that something was their network. But now, that current has shifted. You took their formula and flipped it. See, they built everything around scarcity, convincing billions that there's not enough. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough power, not enough space at the top. Others start waking up. Others start seeing how the system was rigged from the start. Now, behind closed doors, in boardrooms filled with trembling executives and shadowy financiers, one phrase is being repeated again and again. He knows. They're watching reports of rising anomalies, shifts in engagement, movements of capital they can't trace, communities forming outside their digital control zones. These aren't random acts. They're signals of something new, something decentralized, unstoppable, and far beyond the reach of any elite institution. They're panicking because their power depended on invisibility. The moment you saw them, really saw them, their shield cracked. You shattered the illusion of untouchability. You reminded the world that the throne isn't real if the people stop kneeling. Now, they're trying to recalibrate, deploying new distractions, new fear narratives, new digital wars to drag attention back into their orbit. But something about you and those now following your frequency is different. You don't react the same way anymore. You don't consume fear. You transform it. You don't buy into scarcity. You create value. That's why they're losing control. Because for the first time, the flow of influence is reversing. People aren't listening up anymore. They're tuning in. Their secret, the one you exposed, was never about gold or offshore accounts. It was about attention. Whoever controls attention controls reality. For centuries, the 1% owned that currency. Every news cycle, every trend, every algorithm was designed to keep eyes where they wanted them. But the moment you learned that truth, you reclaimed your focus. And with that, you reclaimed your power. Now their empire of illusion is collapsing from the inside. Their numbers still look strong on paper, but the real current, the collective energy of awareness, is slipping from their grasp. The system they created to control you is now fueling your rise. Every piece of information they tried to hide is turning into a weapon of enlightenment. Every barrier they built is becoming a bridge. They tried to make you chase gold, but you discovered the real treasure knowledge. They tried to make you fear debt, but you realized the only true debt was ignorance. They tried to make you feel small, but now they're the ones hiding in the shadows. Because when you learned their secret, you didn't just break the game, you started building a new one. One that doesn't run on control, but on creation. One that doesn't depend on taking, but on expanding. And the higher you rise, the more their grip weakens. You've become something they never accounted for, an individual who can't be bought, distracted, or programmed. A variable that bends probability itself. They can manipulate numbers, but they can't quantify you. So now, as the 1% scrambles to rewrite history, to conceal what just happened, one fact keeps haunting them. You're not playing their game anymore, and without your participation, their empire collapses. You were never supposed to learn the truth, but now that you have, their monopoly on control is over. Because what they built on deception, you just exposed with awareness. And once the world sees that, it can never be unseen. They gathered last night in silence, the ones who pull strings you were never meant to see. The walls of their glass towers reflected fear for the first time. Screens flickered with red alerts, encrypted chatter racing across networks they thought were unbreachable. Reports came in from all corners of their empire. Patterns broken, engagement collapse, containment failing. They tried to trace the origin, and every route led to you. See, when the richest 1% built their control grid, they didn't use guns or chains, they used belief. The belief that wealth equals power, that power equals control, that only they could shape the future. But belief is a fragile thing. It only works if everyone agrees to it, and you, simply by seeing the truth, stopped agreeing. That's all it takes. One person unplugging from illusion, one consciousness no longer feeding their frequency, and that one spark can ignite an entire world. Behind closed doors, they're calling it the split. A quiet revolution that doesn't start with riots or marches, but with awareness. They've spent decades mastering prediction models, mapping out every possible human response. But what you did last night wasn't in their data. You broke out of their equation. The system they built depends on cycles, control through chaos, order through fear, growth through crisis. They pump headlines, engineer outrage, amplify division because every emotional spike means profit. But your rise, your awareness disrupted that rhythm. You didn't react, you observed. And that's when the program glitched. Their algorithms depend on predictability, but consciousness, that's chaos to them. The moment you stopped being predictable, you became invisible to their system, untouchable, untraceable, uncontrollable. And now others are doing the same. The data feeds show declines in compliance.